Section 19 of Narrative of the Life and Adventures of Henry Bibb, an American Slave, written by himself. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit Librivox.org. Recording by James K. White. Narrative of the Life and Adventures of Henry Bibb, an American Slave, written by himself. Chapter 19. Comments on S. Gatewood's letter about slave stealing. Their conduct vindicated. Comments on W. Gatewood's letter. But it seems that I am not now beyond the reach of the foul slander of slaveholders. They are not satisfied with selling and banishing me from my native state. As soon as they got news of my being in the free North, exposing their peculiar institution, a libelous letter was written by Silas Gatewood of Kentucky, a son of one of my former owners, to a Northern committee for publication, which he thought would destroy my influence and character. This letter will be found in the introduction. He has charged me with the awful crime of taking from my keeper and oppressor some of the fruits of my own labor for the benefit of myself and family. But while writing this letter, he seems to have overlooked the disgraceful fact that he was guilty himself of what would here be regarded highway robbery, in his conduct to me as narrated on page 60 of this narrative. A word in reply to Silas Gatewood's letter. I am willing to admit all that is true, but shall deny that which is so basely false. In the first place, he puts words in my mouth that I never used. He says that I represented that my mother belonged to James Bibb. I deny ever having said so in private or public. He says that I stated that Bibb's daughter married a Sibley. I deny it. He also says that the first time that I left Kentucky for my liberty, I was gone about 2 years before I went back to rescue my family. I deny it. I was gone from December 25th, 1837, to May or June, 1838. He says that I went back the second time for the purpose of taking off my family and 8 or 10 more slaves to Canada. This I will not pretend to deny. He says I was guilty of disposing of articles from the farm for my own use, and pocketing the money, and that his father caught me stealing a sackful of wheat. I admit the fact. I acknowledge the wheat. And who had a better right to eat of the fruits of my own hard earnings than myself? Many a long summer's day have I toiled with my wife and other slaves, cultivating his father's fields, and gathering in his harvest, under the scorching rays of the sun, without half enough to eat, or clothes to wear. And at the same time his meat house was filled with bacon and bread stuff, his dairy with butter and cheese, his barn with grain, husbanded by the unrequited toil of the slaves. And yet, if a slave presumed to take a little from the abundance which he had made by his own sweat and toil, to supply the demands of nature, to quiet the craving appetite which is sometimes almost irresistible, it is called stealing by slaveholders. But I did not regard it as stealing then. I do not regard it as such now. I hold that a slave has a moral right to eat, drink, and wear all that he needs, and that it would be a sin on his part to suffer and starve in a country where there is a plenty to eat and wear within his reach. I consider that I had a just right to what I took, because it was the labor of my own hands. Should I take from a neighbor as a freeman in a free country, I should consider myself guilty of doing wrong before God and man. But was I the slave of William Gatewood today, or any other slaveholder, working without wages and suffering with hunger or for clothing, I should not stop to inquire whether my master would approve of my helping myself to what I needed to eat or wear. For while the slave is regarded as property, how can he steal from his master? It is contrary to the very nature of the relation existing between master and slave, from the fact that there is no law to punish a slave for theft but lynch law, and the way they avoid that is to hide well. For illustration, a slave from the State of Virginia, for cruel treatment, left the state between daylight and dark, being borne off by one of his master's finest horses, and finally landed in Canada, where the British laws recognize no such thing as property in a human being. He was pursued by his owners, who expected to take advantage of the British law by claiming him as a fugitive from justice, and as such he was arrested and brought before the Court of Queen's Bench. They swore that he was, at a certain time, the slave of Mr. A., and that he ran away at such a time and stole and brought off a horse. They inquired who the horse belonged to, and it was ascertained that the slave and horse both belonged to the same person. The court therefore decided that the horse and the man were both recognized, in the State of Virginia, alike, as articles of property, belonging to the same person. Therefore, if there was theft committed on either side, the former must have stolen off the latter, the horse brought away the man, and not the man the horse. So the man was discharged and pronounced free according to the laws of Canada. There are several other letters published in this work upon the same subject from slaveholders, which it is hardly necessary for me to notice. However, I feel thankful to the writers for the endorsement and confirmation which they have given to my story. No matter what their motives were, they have done me and the anti slavery cause good service in writing those letters, but more especially the Gatewoods. Silas Gatewood has done more for me than all the rest. He has labored so hard in his long communication in trying to expose me, that he has proved every thing that I could have asked of him, and for which I intend to reward him by forwarding him one of my books, hoping that it may be the means of converting him from a slaveholder to an honest man, and an advocate of liberty for all mankind. The reader will see in the introduction that William Gatewood writes a more cautious letter upon the subject than his son Silas. It is not a very easy matter to catch old birds with chaff, and I presume if Silas had the writing of his letter over again, he would not be so free in telling all he knew, and even more, for the sake of making out a strong case. The object of his writing such a letter will doubtless be understood by the reader. It was to destroy public confidence in the victims of slavery, that the system might not be exposed. It was to gag a poor fugitive who had undertaken to plead his own cause, and that of his enslaved brethren. It was a feeble attempt to suppress the voice of universal freedom, which is now thundering on every gale. But thank God it is too late in the day. Go stop the mighty thunder's roar. Go hush the ocean's sound, or upward like the eagle soar to skies remotest bound. And when thou hast the thunder stopped, and hushed the ocean's waves, then Freedom's spirit bind in chains, and ever hold us slaves. And when the eagle's boldest fest thou canst perform with skill, then think to stop proud Freedom's march, and hold the bondman still. End of chapter 19. Recording by James K. White. Chula Vista.